All right. I'd like to call to order the January 11th meeting of the New Canaan Board of Education and our first meeting of 2021. First on the agenda tonight is to approve our minutes from our very short December 21st meeting. Is there a motion? Penny, second. Sherry, all in favor? Okay. Next is to review and approve our agenda for this evening. Is there a motion? Brendan, second. Carl, all in favor? Okay. Comments from the public. Brian, do you see, Dr. Lutz, do you see anybody? Is there anybody wishing to speak? If so, please do so by using the raise hand feature via the link, and we will call on you.
And the attendees are all employees, so we're okay there.
Okay.
And I don't believe anyone is in the lobby,
Oh.
so I think we're okay there.
Okay, moving on.
All right.
So first this evening under reports and recognition is an update on COVID from Dr. Lutzy and the cabinet.
Yes, thank you. Good evening and Happy New Year to everyone. Briefly, as an update to what's happening in our district with COVID-19, and I will invite anyone in the cabinet, certainly welcome to jump in and share others. But as you're aware, we participated remotely in school last week. Our students were logging in, most of them from home, some from other places. But the feedback we received throughout the course of the week was that it was fundamentally different than the experience in the spring when we had to close and quickly reopen, and significantly improved. I think the lessons that we learned in the spring and applying those lessons to the work that we were doing in preparation for this week really paid off. And where I think we really, took some significant steps forward in delivering instruction remotely, K-12, really across the board. That being said, it's still no replacement for in-person learning, so we were proud to welcome back our pre-K 8 students today, and also our high school students in the 50-50 hybrid plan. I'm sure you saw the messaging that went out earlier about the hybrid plus, which is still a goal for us. We believe that putting a system in place that brings more students into school each day is the right move and the right goal for us to have. And I think we are confident that hybrid plus 75% plan still keeps us in the range we want to be as far as population density, but brings more students into school so they get to see each other more. You know, there's pluses and minuses to every system you put in place. And then the 50-50 hybrid we're running now, it is helpful in an environment where we have spread. And we're in that environment today. We know that the numbers are not great. The trends have not been moving in the right direction. At the high school right now, we've got around 30 known positive cases, vast majority of those with students. So in that environment, the 50-50 hybrid makes sense because it helps us by reducing the density even more, strengthening the mitigation strategies that we have. It also helps to keep students safe by reducing the likelihood that someone's going to be a close contact of a positive case, and therefore having to quarantine. Nobody wants to have to quarantine, of course, but the bigger concern is always that folks are going to be near others that have the virus and pick it up themselves. So that's why we're going to stay in that 50-50 for the immediate time being. But our goal is to transition to the 75% and the hybrid plus. And so we're going to keep watching, looking at what's happening and making decisions along the way. I'm grateful for everyone who flexibly understood the rationale behind the move that was communicated yesterday. And, we want to keep looking forward and keep working hard to make things better. But we always are going to prioritize health and safety and make our decisions based on that. And that is what drove the decision to return to 50-50 instead of the hybrid plus. But that's on the horizon. We're confident we're going to get there. The spread is present throughout the state and throughout the country, as we know. The numbers have not improved, but it is what we anticipated, right? It's what going into the holiday break, the folks had a lot of unstructured time. There were get-togethers, there were gatherings, and we knew the science was telling us that those gatherings do lead to positive cases, and that's what we're still seeing now. So we're going to keep working with them, with the health department, with folks when they do test positive and do become ill, to help make sure they improve and do what we can to help them, and then to do the quarantines as need be. There were some changes in the quarantines from 14 days to 10 days, but there is a big caveat there that's important for everyone to note. The CDC and then the DPH and the governor's travel advisory all moved from a mandatory 14-day quarantine to a possible 10-day quarantine for essential functions. So in the schools, what that means is if a student returns to school after 10 days of quarantine, that student is still not expected to participate in any extracurricular activities, no athletics. When athletics begin again, they're supposed to stay out of congregate settings everywhere else as they can. They're really even discouraged from going to restaurants or going out at all on days 10 through 14. Well, 11 through 14, right? So the thing is, when you're making these decisions with DPHs, it's always probability versus the need for people to be a part of these essential functions. So they believe and they recognize that students need to be in school whenever possible. And so that's sort of a carve out. But if somebody does return after the 10, then they should monitor themselves daily. They should, as I said, exclude themselves or remove themselves from those other environments and really just focus on coming into school during that time, but not doing anything else outside of school. And again, monitoring their symptoms and their health every day from days 11 through 14 to be sure that they don't start to develop symptoms. It's rare, but we have had students here that have developed symptoms on day 13 or 14. So it's rare and it's a probability thing, but it is something that we have to be aware of. So we make the move, but we have to do that cautiously. The last piece was there was some confusion and just concern that the governor's travel recommendation or guidelines were that you could test out of quarantine returning to Connecticut. But schools, we don't allow people to test out. And we've tried to be as clear as we can to say we don't test out of quarantine. You have to do 10 days symptom-free and then a return to class. That sort of the different standards has caused some confusion for some folks, but we are confident that the 10 days are important and that we're going to stick to that and not have a test out option in the short term. The reason the travel advisory allows for the test out at this point is the understanding from DPH and others that the virus is present here and elsewhere, and the pre-test probability of someone testing from another state or testing in Connecticut is relatively similar. It's about the same. So it makes, when we added an extra layer on top of the travel advisory back around Thanksgiving, it was because Connecticut was in a better place with the virus. There was less virus in Connecticut than there was elsewhere. Right, so we were green, other states were red, and so we said you had to be back in Connecticut first and then test. Now, the situation and context is different. Many of the states are in an equally bad spot. So it's really about getting that test within 72 hours of return to bound it in some way. But the Department of Public Health says that given where we are as a state and as a country, that 72 hours is just as safe as testing when you get back into Connecticut. Because of the likelihood of picking up the virus in either of the locations, either spot. There's lots and lots and lots. I guess the very last thing I'll say was just prior to this meeting, the Department of Public Health letter to the CIAC was shared with districts. That speaks to a resuming of athletics on the 19th of January. And the CIAC now is taking up this letter and their return to play guidelines on a meeting on Thursday. So we expect being able to share updated information with the board. Hopefully by Friday, that information will be out. The 19th is Tuesday, so it's a week away. And their guidelines talk about getting students back to practice for a period of time and resuming contests locally on February 1st. No interstate travel, some of those other guidelines are there. One of the things that's stressed in the DPH letter to the CIAC is the need for return to play protocol for students who've tested positive for the virus. And so there's a paragraph in there about the concerns about a cardiac impact on students and others who have contracted the virus. And so I was just on my weekly DPH call, and we were talking about a return to play protocol. And we talked about the concussion return to play protocol, so we have them. We know how to, use a protocol like that to resume play for kids. So we're going to look at something along those lines as a state, I believe, in order to do that. The last part of the update, I guess, is the vaccine conversations continuing. The CDC has nationally recommended who should be in the 1B category of vaccine distribution. The vaccine state committee is meeting again on Thursday, also to continue that discussion and hopefully make a final recommendation to Governor Lamont as far as who should be in the 1B. While that's been going on, I've been working closely with Jen in the health department, who's always been a couple of steps ahead of the state and everyone else, as far as I can tell. So she has the refrigeration required. She has our vaccination plan. We have the names of all of the folks ready to go to be uploaded into the VAMS system, which is Vaccine Administration Management System. So we're ready. So when that decision's made, we'll be ready to keep moving forward. And when we move into phase 1B, if teachers and educators and school staff are part of that, then we'll work with the health department to prioritize the different groups and keep moving us through. One last thing, I'm sorry. The very, very last thing is we did some testing on Friday for our teachers, and that was part of, we were closed last week, as you said. We were open, of course, running, but our buildings were closed. And about half the teachers came in, I think, approximately. We had our principals keeping track, and I could certainly share the specifics if you're interested. But about 50%, it kind of waxed and waned a little bit throughout the course of the week, but many were teaching from their classroom. They found that better and easier. They had the resources right there. At the elementary grades especially, I think we saw more of that. So we went through the week, and on Friday we had a large-scale testing for our staff. We had over 400 folks come in and take the test and do it. We had 2 positives, none of whom worked directly in the schools. They were in different functions. So that was positive news for us. It does speak to the care that our staff continue to take outside of school and in their own personal lives to be careful. They have taken this very seriously. They've been great partners with us throughout. They've attended all of the education sessions. They're, implementing the mitigation strategies in their lives, and I think it really reflects positively on how careful they're being, as we go through. So I was proud of those results on their behalf. We also opened the town testing Thursday, Friday, Saturday to students as first priority, and we only had a couple of positives from that as well. So that's, I think, all good news there, which has helped informed our decision to get back into in-person instruction today. We just couldn't get to that hybrid plus because of all the positives at the high school right now. So as the New Year's Eve parties and the other get-togethers and things kind of work their way out of the system, then we're ready to go. We've got our schedules ready, our kids are ready, everyone understands it, and we are ready to put that in place when the time is right. If there's anything anyone else would like to add, or if there are any questions from the board or anything we can do.
Okay.
Brian, I would just add that the special education team and I, worked hard to put together a program for our most complex students. If we were to go full remote for the second week, we put together what will be a half-day program for those students, arrange the transportation. We were all grateful that we don't have to use it this week, but in the event that down the road we need to go full remote, we have a plan in place for programming for our most complex students for about half days across pre-K to launch. So we're all set in the event that we need that in the future, and hopefully we won't, but we're ready to go if we need to.
Great. Great. Thanks, Bill.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate the update.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, our first action item, our only action item tonight, is the big one. First read of the superintendent's 21-22 budget. Before Dr. Lutzy begins, I'll ask for a motion to approve as a first read the 21-22 superintendent's budget. First Brendan, second Jen, all in, oh, and that, I'll leave it, I'll hold off there.
Yep, hold off there.
A little eager.
It could be the quickest budget season ever. All right. I am going to share on the screen the budget document itself. This is the final budget document. Thank you to the board for understanding. You know, on Friday, we wanted to get a draft out, so you had the weekend to look at some things. But certainly over the weekend and today, there were some changes made, some revisions and additions that I think will help with, helps with the overall picture of the budget and everything that we are doing. So instead, given the technology and given the hybrid nature and I wanted to make sure that the folks online could see this clearly. We're doing this as a screen share, and I'm going to work through that document itself. As you'll recall, in years past, we created a PowerPoint deck that pulled information off and what have you. I thought that instead of doing that, this year we would work through the document because I do believe it's so well built and put together. It's all right here. So we'll do that, and then if there are questions and other things that come up from the board that you'd like us to go a little deeper on, we'll be glad to do that for our next meeting or even the resources meeting next week, and we can create some new exhibits and slides or something like that if need be. So it's a little different than we've done in the past, but I think it'll be equally, if not more, successful. So as we begin, I also want to say a quick thank you to, to everyone that was involved, and I'll get into the specifics, but also to our business staff, to Joanne's staff, with Tracy, with Erin. Jacqueline helped out today. We had Laura, we had everyone in the office helping today. But what you see in front of you really is the next evolution of our budget document, in that in the past, we created the paper document, we created binders for everyone, and then we ran them through the scanner, put them online, and it was just there as one big sort of document. There were some links, and you could navigate it a bit, but it wasn't very user-friendly. So what we've done here is create an entire PDF file of the document, which I think is a big step. I know is a big step forward. But beyond that, we've created a table of contents into each of the different sections of the document, and we've hyperlinked the table of contents itself. So on the page, you can click anywhere you want to go, it'll bring you there. But when you set it up in PDF, in Adobe, and you view table of contents, you see hyperlinks all down the left-hand side. This document exists on our website, and that also gives us the ability to update it periodically, to add into it, to repaginate, do those things. So now it's a living document. So instead of coming into a Board of Ed meeting with 6 different pages to put in different places and trying to manage this in the binder and carrying the binder around, the document on our website will be the living document that we will continually update. So we'll certainly let you know anything that changes, because I know some people will download this onto their iPads or onto their computers and mark it up, and we'll want to keep that copy. And certainly we want to respect that. But certainly for the community, and as we continue to move forward, I think that having a living document will be a great help to everybody. So I want to say thanks to everyone who helped to make that happen. Let's see. So we go into, as I click here on the left, you can see it jumps around, or brings us place to place. So as we begin, I want to share, so one of the slides I do have that we didn't put in here, and maybe I'll put it on as an attachment or something, are the meetings that we have over the next couple of months, certainly with our Board of Ed here, with our Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, the Town Council. Over the course between today and the last day of March, March 31st, we'll have 16 meetings together with, again, the Board of Ed, Selectmen, Finance, and the Town Council to discuss our budget, specifically about that. So tonight, we have our meeting today just to bring it forward and to begin the conversation. Tomorrow, I'll be meeting with the PTCs combined from the 3 elementary schools, and we'll talk about budget. Of course, we'll talk about COVID a bit. We'll talk about whatever other questions arise, but just to give an overview of what's going on and what we're doing with the budget and how it's all working, and the initiatives that are being included herein. The next day on Wednesday, I'll meet with the SACs and the high school PTC and PFA to have the same conversation, of course, with the high school or the Saks twist. Next week, the week of the 19th, I've spoken with the chair of the Resources Committee, and feeling was that we should schedule a Resources Committee meeting that week for the whole board to attend, that we can put aside some time to go through the budget and have our conversation together. We could do it, workshop-y, open it up for a conversation and questions and process together. And I think that did that last year as well. And I think it was a good way for people to be able to kind of interact with the numbers and understand the document and feel comfortable with what's happening. The following week, on Monday the 25th, is the second reading of the budget for the Board of Ed. And it's at that point that the Board of Ed would adopt the budget and it goes forward from there as the Board of Ed's adopted budget. Up from here till there, it's the superintendent's proposed, then it becomes the Board of Ed proposed, and then we continue forward. That date's important for a variety of reasons. One is that the following morning at 8:30, I'll be bringing it to the Board of Selectmen's meeting, where I'll give a quick overview of operating, but then we delve deeper into capital. And we talk more about some of the plans for our buildings and our district on the capital side. We'll talk about that tonight a bit too. The CHP plans, the solar plans, other things that are short and long term. And there is an infrastructure committee, a Selectmen's Infrastructure Committee that meets monthly that Penny represents the board on. And certainly Joanne and Dan go to that as well. So we'll be going there on the 26th. And then 2 days later, the Board of Selectmen adopts the budget. They don't adopt the operating, they adopt the capital budget. And then we look to move forward from there. Without going through, each piece of everything, and I'll make sure this is public for everyone to see. But on Tuesday, February 9th, we present to the Board of Finance. A couple of weeks later, on Tuesday, March 3rd, the Board of Finance will hold its budget public hearing. And then 2 days later, on the 4th, is the Board of Finance vote to move the budget forward. Town Council and then there's one more conversation with the Board of Ed in the middle of all of that. Town Council follows a similar pattern with 4 meetings with the Board of Ed. And so our presentation to them will be on March 16th. Their public hearing is March 25th, and then the final vote on March 31st. So our process, many of the meetings will be remote, if not all of them. I think the Board of Ed may be the only town body that I'm aware of, at least, that's meeting in a hybrid right now. That's, it's beneficial in that it helps participation to be remote for folks, so we'll be able to log in and to do it that way. I will look to share my screen similar to what we'll be doing throughout our process and, have those conversations via Zoom. So looking forward to that. The budget that you have in front of you, is the result of months of work already. And we go into this, first of all, with a thanks to the Board of Education for your help and support and guidance throughout this entire process and throughout everything that we've been doing. Certainly Joanne and Tracy deserve an awful lot of gratitude for their efforts in putting all this together. But going back, it's the hours and hours of meetings with Jill and the curriculum support and team and the tech support and team and with Bill Tesber with his folks and his team and the clinical team and everything that happens around the special education department with Darlene and the staff and the unions and all of everyone works very, very hard, as you know, and we're so lucky to have such a dedicated team who, in the midst of arguably the most challenging time in education, kept their eye on the ball, knew that tonight we had to have this done, we had to get it ready, and it had to be right. And I'm incredibly grateful for all of them and proud of what's in front of you because it does represent their professionalism and dedication to doing this right. You never want to lose that long-term focus due to the challenges in the short term. And their expertise and professionalism kept that focus. And that's what we're seeing here. Because a budget is so much more than just a spreadsheet, as we know. A budget resources your priorities, your goals, your vision for the future. And it would be a disservice to put anything in front of you that didn't do that as it has year in and year out here in our district. So what you have in front of you is representative of amazing amount of work by truly dedicated and talented professionals. And that same level of gratitude and my same compliments goes right to our district administrators as well. You know, the work that we do with a central office team is really done in partnership with and close cooperation with our building administrators, our principals, assistant principals, our district administrators whose, you know, roles are so much more complex now. You know, Lizette can't just jump into, you know, meetings, pull her people together, do that work. Alan can't, others can't. We're doing things virtually. We're still meeting and having the conversations and doing the work and getting it done, but there's this extra layer of complexity right on top of it. And they're still right there getting it done. You know, this is nothing that we're going through is a reason not to do the work that is so crucial and so important and valuable for our kids. And it's just been truly awe-inspiring to watch the whole team rise up, do everything we have to do, and be able to reframe their thinking and planning to plan forward and to bring forward, you know, this budget document. So truly impressive. The budget document itself includes an executive summary, which starts with the you know, my sort of overview, and I'm certainly not going to read this to you. They give me 7 pages. I could have used 17. So that's okay. I think, you know, I did not put a professional editor in the budget, but I think some people that read my emails would like us to. But I do want to just share, you know, in the very beginning, in this year's budget, and this year, as you know, COVID-19 has challenged us, all of us, professionally and personally, you know, in ways that we never imagined, right? And so, well, we're navigating uncharted waters, and our commitment to care for our students, faculty, staff, and community continues to faithfully serve as our true north and our unwavering guide as we go throughout this journey. And I just want to share, you know, history teaches us that authentic leaders step forward when times are tough. They listen to, empathize, and assist those who are struggling. They help others confront the difficult facts of our current reality, no matter how challenging they are, and they anchor others' belief that together we'll succeed and build a better future. And since this started back in March, district and town leaders, they've stepped forward, they've led with yes, and they've met the moment as needed with skill and alacrity. And it's been an honor and a privilege for all of us to lead our school community through these challenging times. And I just want to share, I'm just deeply grateful to be a part of this incredibly dedicated and talented team. All of us together make New Canaan Public Schools what they are. And as we've done this time and again, we've just shown that no matter what comes, we will get through it, we will do the right things, and when the pandemic ends, and it will end, and when it ends, we'll be able to look back on every decision we made and every step we took and be proud of how we did this together. And you know, it's so powerful to be able to say that, and I can only say it because of everyone working together, keeping in our sights what's most important, which is caring for each other, caring for our students and our kids, providing them with the tools they need to get through these challenges and to succeed. So it's been challenging. It's going to continue to be challenging, but as I often say, if it was easy, someone else would be doing it. We've got the right people doing this work, stepping forward, and we see the results every day. So with that, we'll start, and I do, of course, encourage you to read all 7 pages, but I'm not going to do that to you. And just when you're done, just think that he could have used 5 or 7 more. But our enrollment projections first. We lead with enrollment in our budget book, and I do typically lead with it when we're going through our PowerPoints, because it does drive our decision making. This is what determines our staffing. And as you know, staffing it's 81% of our budget, right, is salaries and benefits for our 750 some odd staff members. So we have the staff that we have because we have the student body that we have. So we look closely at enrollment. I was going to share with you, I found it very interesting. I went back 10 years and I looked at the NASDAQ projections from 10 years ago, where they thought we would be today. And it was about 3,600 kids. And we're around 4,200, right? So I say that for two reasons. One, it's very difficult to do long-term projections in a good year. COVID has created a situation where, I mean, flip a coin. You know, we're looking at how do you figure out what's going to happen in a once-in-a-century pandemic with kindergarten enrollment. Like, there's a lot of data out there about what happened in 1918. Not that, right? So we're trying to figure out exactly what impact that might have. We know the real estate market has been doing well. We've been watching it heat up. We've seen the transactions and, increasing. I've heard positive things about what's going on in town with home values and home sales. So I think that is an indicator that we can use a little bit to inform us. These projections are done based on the enrollment in our schools on October 1st. And so we've looked at, just even as recently as Friday, Laura took a look, our district registrar took a look at the in-migration and out-migration in the district for January. Now, typically what happens is we'll have some students that start the first day of the new calendar year. So maybe they've moved, they've got the house, they're going to finish out, do the holidays, and then they come right back in on that first day. But what we're actually seeing is very different than that. What we're seeing is kind of a consistent in-migration of students over the next, say, 4, 5, 6 weeks. So each week we're picking up a couple of kids. Now, we've had some out-migration too, which, that balance occurs, but we're net positive on the number of students that we're picking up as we go into these weeks. So that is different. That's a different enrollment pattern. Because typically, as you can imagine, parents would move, they might buy a house, whatever, but then they try to start the new year in their new school. But I think because of the real estate market and the housing turnover and the pace and what's happening, it seems to be sort of spreading that out a bit. But we're up more than we had been traditionally. And it's in just, I think it's every grade, to be honest, K-12. I need to look specifically to see it. But anyway, we're seeing that. That's not included in these projections, right? We didn't know that on October 1st, that we would have this kind of in-migration going on. We weren't sure what was going to be happening with enrollment. It's different. So with this volatility, we have our enrollment, we have on October 1, we have the projections, and you can see overall the projections are as Darlene shared with us back in November, for our enrollment to remain stable. We go up and down in a grade level because the students move through the grade, right? So you might have a larger class at one building moving into the next building. So it may look like that grade is going down, but on balance, it's relatively stable. And you see the projections on October 1 were district-wide to be down 81 students. And when you're talking about over 4,000 students, that's not a lot, right? So as we look at it. So we looked at that, we looked at the trends and thought about what's the best sort of staffing plan. And on the next few pages, you see the staffing plan. Ultimately, the decision was made to budget for our existing staff and carrying this existing staff forward, right? And if there are changes that we have to adjust to, we will. But given where we are today, we believe it's the right decision and the right move. The 1.50 staffing change that you see here, and it's on page 14, is related to the school start times initiative that I'll talk about in a minute. Okay. So that one change that has to do with aligning the schedules at the elementary school means that a reduction in our ability to share staff across the 3 schools. So right now, because of the south starting earlier than east and west, we can have teachers go back and forth a little bit. So we anticipate we wouldn't be able to do that. So we built in a 0.5 for that. Okay. And again, you'll see that as we go into the staffing plan. So here is, and what we did in this budget document was break out very clearly budget impact of the school start time. So you see staffing for change in start and end times, 0.5 right there, and that's in the certified. And then we continue down. Total certified staff, 0.5. is that part, that's part of that 1.5. And then the other, as you scroll down, you will see it right here in transportation. 1.0 change in transportation. Okay? And that is, again, with the 3 elementary schools aligned. We have a third wheelchair van, but vans that may be delivering to the elementary, and then the other one, sharing that van, we wouldn't be able to do that anymore that's our in-house transportation system. That's not DATCO, because the costs for the DATCO drivers are built into the DATCO contract, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But on the staffing side, that's a driver in Roy's department with the white vans. Make sense? Okay. So I'm just going to jump up to the school start times for a moment, just to have this brief discussion here. And again, glad to get into it more and talk through. As you know, we did discuss this a bit at the budget workshop and spoke about it a bit last week at the resources committee. After looking at the planning from last year, as you know, the school start time plan was brought forward. We have been looking at it since 2017. And really, you know, I probably have already I've mischaracterized this. It's not really a school start time initiative, right? This is a student health and wellness initiative. And a part of that is aligning the schedules with the recommendations from CDC and others to help students to get the sleep required. Now, we've been living through a health pandemic, and one of the things that continues to be written about and studied is the impact of sleep on health and the immune system and what have you. The last week, while we were remote at the high school, we started our school day at 8 o'clock. You know, we gave students a little extra time to sleep in. The block schedule that we've implemented at the high school is a rotating block schedule. And I've talked to Bill a little bit about if we're going to continue this, can we have all 4 periods rotating so that wherever, if anyone has a free period anywhere in their day, it will always at one point or another fall in the first thing in the morning for that sleep in. That's another sort of strategy around student health and wellness. The school start times is another strategy around student health and wellness. You never do this just to do it. You do it with that larger goal in mind. So in thinking about it, everything we've learned, we're bringing this forward for the board's discussion and consideration for next school year. But we also realize that the impacts of COVID are likely still going to be felt in the next school year. The budget does include resources for continued substitute coverage for half a year. It includes additional custodians for the disinfecting and cleaning required for the half year. So we're anticipating that for the first half of next year, at a minimum, COVID will still be impacting our operations. So we made the decision to bring it to you tonight as a mid-year implementation of the school start times. So knowing that the fall is too unpredictable, even our enrollment is unpredictable as we look at it. So knowing the sort of all the questions that are out there and wanting to have some more time to bring in some more community members as well for some of the discussions, because the plan we bring before you, we believe we've carefully vetted it, we've looked at it, we've looked at the constraints and worked things through. But we'd like to have opportunities for more people to have some more discussion about it. If they feel that this isn't the right plan, we'd like to have that conversation and learn what their thinking is, share with them what we know, and see where things go. Ultimately, when this kind of a large whole district systems change initiative goes through, it works best when it's seen as a community-wide initiative, not a superintendent's initiative, not a buildings initiative, not a Board of Ed's initiative, but we want it to be community-wide. So we think that time allows us some more of those conversations to occur as well. There's also a very practical reason to do it mid-year, which is our budget not being approved and finalized until March 31st doesn't give enough lead time for the bus company to order the buses, get the drivers, do all that. There's a significant driver shortage right now that's impacting many of our surrounding districts and across the state. We've been fortunate in that when we even went to shut down, we made some decisions that really we invested in our staff and in the company and in the folks that drive the buses with their families, and they've returned with loyalty for us. We may be the only district, I believe I heard that in the recent conversation, where every single driver returned to work this fall. Many others were struggling and continue to struggle to find folks to drive. So with that, in that context, we're looking at adding additional buses, so it'll take some time to find some folks. Okay. So the plan that we bring forward is the original plan, which was in the budget last year, and recognizing that we did some additional work throughout the budget season. The goal was trying to get as close to 8 o'clock as possible, trying to shave off minutes here and there, and that work we would re-engage in and continue doing. But you know me well enough to know we're not going to put a plan forward that we don't have 100% confidence in working, right? So those would be the ways that we would look to improve upon this plan. But you'll also recall last year we couldn't get to 8 o'clock, not without pushing the second tier off significantly later. And we couldn't get to 9 o'clock on the far other side without making the other one earlier. So there may be opportunity here, but I want to always start with the plan that we know can work with 45 minutes in between, and then we can look to optimize that, by minutes here and there. Okay? So the plan does align the 3 elementary school schedules. It puts the high school and 7th and 8th grade in around the 8:30 time, and then the upper division at 9:15. Additional buses are needed because the 3 elementaries starting at the same time means that we've got more kids on that tier than we do right now. Fewest kids on the last tier, and you remember the charts. I don't need to go through all of those again. I'm glad to do it in the resources meeting if anyone would like a refresher about the earliest pickup time and being after 7 o'clock and all of that stuff. So we can always, they're only a click away, so I'd be glad to go through that at the workshop if you like. Okay. But I think it's important to understand the thinking around the mid-year implementation. And that doesn't mean we would do it on the 91st day either, right? We would look to see if this is going to go forward, we're going to make this happen. Where's the logical break to do this? And it might be the day we return from February break. It might be the day we return from the holidays. I don't know, but we'd have that conversation too and try to give as much lead time for families as possible. And that was another challenge with trying to approve it at the end of March, beginning of April, and implement the change in August. It really didn't give an awful lot of time for families. So this gives more time for folks that have to work out any kind of things. I'm interested in some conversations with folks centered on commuting time and travel time and family time. And given all of where we are now and the shift to remote work, some or most of the time for many people, I'm interested when the conversations do come. Has that changed, their experience, and could it work that way? So another reason this is so important to all of us is the high school block schedule, as I said, can work to help a bit for health. Shifting the high school schedule when we were remote last week, and all those things were all good. Saks is still in a tough spot. That 7th and 8th grade, and all of running 2 schools within 1 school and sharing staff across them really put some hard constraints on your schedule. So we can't just flip the 7th and 8th grade to mirror the high school because of the way we use our staff, and it's in our elective areas and others. So, this is, I feel, and I think the board feels, and I'm glad to talk about it, that this is an initiative to continue pursuing, which is why it's in the superintendent's proposed budget. Okay. The staffing, and again, pages are all here. It's all online for anyone to see. That's the 1.5 there. And then we get into, again, it's location by location, and then it's function by function. As we look, we try to get as granular as we can with certified and non-certified, as we go through. So COVID's presented many challenges to us in many ways, every facet of our lives for the most part, right? It was equally challenging to figure out how to represent the budget in a meaningful way for the board, for the community, for everyone to understand what's happening. And the reason why is, when we closed our schools, buildings in March. On March 11th, we closed our school buildings in 2020. By March 13th, we were operating and running remote and teaching, and we flipped right to, and really just, again, did an amazing job by our staff and everybody that was involved. But our buildings did stay closed the remainder of the school year. So there was approximately $2 million that we didn't spend on heating, electricity, on athletics transportation, on a whole host of things, right? And so that's not in our actual expended budget. But we did need the resources to prepare our building to open in response to all of the challenges with COVID. As we look into next year and building the budget for next year, one of the things we really eagerly anticipate is restoring many of these things that we had to pause or not do, going back into our full program. So we saved money in last year and even in this year because we had to reduce program opportunities for kids, after school opportunities, our athletics transportation again. I mean, we talked about restarting the sports on the 19th, but our athletics transportation is going to be down several hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Because we're not moving teams around, we're not doing those things. And the list goes on. So we look forward to being able to restoring those in next year, which is not an accurate, it's not an accurate analysis of the budget on a year-to-year basis, because the money was reduced and turned back because we didn't need it, because we didn't run the program. But these are not new programs that we're adding into the budget. We're restoring what was paused, which creates a delta. So as we worked through that, and if Dr. Keating or others are certainly welcome to explain it more clearly than me, but as we work through, how do we make sense of this? Because really, COVID impacts 3 years as we're looking at it. It impacted FY19, right? It's impacting FY20. Actually, go back. Impacted FY20, 21, and then this 22 budget. So 3 years are being impacted by COVID that, if it hadn't happened, it would be a smoother trajectory. I mean, just one more example. I don't want to belabor the point, but what are insurance numbers, right? This, as a self-insured district, with our $12 to $14 million in our insurance reserve and everything that happens there, the drop in insurance utilization last year saved the district millions of dollars, which is good. But as we look forward, we anticipate that we've got to restore that money back to where it would have been. So it looks like a year-to-year significant increase because we didn't need it last year, but only because of COVID. But on a straight line, we're not budgeting any more than we did 3 years ago for the insurance reserve. So it's those kinds of complex. So we talked it through and said, let's look at a 5-year look. What are the trends? Where are we looking back over those 5 years? And to try to make it so that there's more meaning behind the number and what we're going to see and what we're going to talk about than trying to just give it one specific, here's what was last year, here's what we're budgeting for next year, because the impact of COVID is on a significant scale with expenditures. And as a district, and it's the right thing to do, excuse me, we've committed always, if there's resources in the budget that are unspent, we turn them back. That's what we've done. That's how we've done this. And then if we've needed them, as we did for COVID expenditures, we went to the Board of Finance, Town Council, and they gave us the resources we needed to do the work that we do. Excuse me. So that was removed out of the operating budget, and we decided to move it treat it more like capital. And that's worked out well. We have a non-lapsing account now with the town. And I think one of the conversations that we'll have with the Board of Finance in the weeks ahead is unspent resources in this year's budget is looking to move that into that non-lapsing account to try to pay for COVID expenses in the new year. And that's something that we'll work out. We'll meet with Todd and the committee as we have been to try to make that happen. But these challenges make it very difficult to do any kind of an annual comparison. And again, even the 3 years that COVID impacts, we wanted to get to a place where what we're giving you to look at and how we're having the discussion makes sense for a program. Because what we wouldn't do, and what we're not planning to do, is when COVID is gone and we're back to normal operations, run the program that we're running today, right? There's more to our program. There are after-school activities, there's athletics, there's other VPA opportunities. Like, that's our baseline. Pre-COVID is the baseline, not during COVID. And so that's, if that makes sense, that's how we thought we'd frame this out for all of you. So with that, I will jump to page 19 in your budget book. And what you'll see here is that 5-year look. And we go back to the FY 17, 18, 19, and 20 are the actual expenditures. Okay. We are, of course, right in the middle of FY 21. So what we have there are the projections that we create each year. Okay. And special thanks to the Resources Committee in helping us process this and understand and work through some options and how to share. So as you look, we have our 8 objects in the budget, as we always do. And the state sets that up at their level. And then all of our accounts, of course, are subsets of those 8 large objects. The fees are what we take in, and that's through the generosity of the Booster Club, of our PTCs, PFA, and others. It can also be a delta, for instance, the year that we run the Turkey Bowl. You'll see there's an item in here for expense of the Turkey Bowl for security and other things, because we are scheduled to host it this upcoming year. So we'll have the gate that more than offsets it, and that gets collected in the fees there. Excuse me. We broke out the COVID expenses in the operating budget, which you see here in red. And this is what we are anticipating our expenses are going to be COVID-related in the new budget. And so net of the COVID expenses, if we look at this trend, where we start here in FY 17, and you build that out over the course of those 5 years, you're looking at a 1.94%, sort of 5-year, is that compounded? CAGR, is that what that stands for? Compounded annual growth. And underneath, just as a reference point, there's the inflation year by year. And important to note, I said before, if we have resources allocated in our budget that we don't spend, we turn them back. It's the right thing to do, and we always do. And so this, with COVID, it's been significant, and that's where you have the $2 million there and the $1 million there. I'm just going to jump to the next page, if that's all right. Oh,
Question?
Of course.
Jen.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just have the budget. I have what you sent as the draft, but I'm not on the Zoom call, so I can't see page 19.
Oh, you don't have this?
I don't think I do, unless.
So-
There was an email sent?
Was there another email
A
sent?
couple hours ago?
It was, okay.
From Jacqueline?
Sorry, I didn't interrupt.
No, I'm glad you
I'm
did.
not following you.
So so just so everyone hears that's on the call. First, it's on our website. If for anyone at home who would like to go and to get it, anyone here for Board of Ed and cabinet members and others, the invite, there was an updated invite that was sent at about
5:57?
5 or 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Maybe 5, I think it's maybe 5 o'clock.
4:57.
4:57? 5 o'clock. And there's a link in that updated invite that will bring you right to the document.
Thank you so much, sorry.
Got it? No.
Thank you.
No, that's
Yes.
important. Thank you, Jen.
Got it.
And when I talk about the draft from Friday versus, getting this today, like this is, again, huge thanks to everyone who worked throughout the weekend on this to try to make meaning of a really complex, challenging budget, given all the changes. So just to go to, there's 2 more exhibits I want to share, and then I will go into the sort of the why the budget changed. This one is, it really rolls up those 8 objects into the budget itself for each of the fiscal years on the left. And what we're doing here is trying to show, because that variation in the insurance, just a significant amount, right? When you're self-insured and you go months without anyone using the insurance, that adds up to a lot of money. So we have the budget. This is the total budget on the left. Underneath that ISF is the Internal Services Fund, okay? So when we look at the budget, net the ISF, right, and keep going to the right, and you're seeing the 1 year in FY19, we did access the excess cost grant, which, as you know, is the special education reimbursement for high-cost students. And this budget grosses up the amount that we anticipate we'll need for outplacements. And as we have done in the past, the town receives the excess cost reimbursement grant. And if there are unanticipated costs in our budget, we're able to access those funds to make us whole on the expenditures. It's an agreement we've had for the last 6 years, 7 years, and it's worked out well, I think, for both. So then anything we don't use, the town moves into the general fund. Yep. So I think it works well. Back in FY18, we turned back $571,000 of unspent. So we add that, net that out or add that in, depending. And we get to our base non-internal services fund costs. And then as you go down, you see those 3 years with the COVID impacts, the 2.1, the 1.5, and the 909. So as we look at it this way, we're looking at the 9.91% growth if we pull out the internal services fund from the calculation and do those few other things to true it up, which is an average growth over this time of just under 2%, a 1.98%. And in the internal services fund, just to make the point, 2.06% average growth over these 5 years in an insurance account in an extremely expensive and volatile and in an environment where you're seeing others, for instance, folks that went into the state insurance plan, they're trending at a much higher rate. So to trend at just over 2%.
0.41, right?
Oh, I'm sorry, 0.4. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
The budget's 206. Thank you.
Yeah.
0.41 is even, I should be speaking even louder. That's even more exciting. It's really remarkable. And it speaks, again, I know last budget cycle, we spent a lot of time, I think, really going through all of the levers we've pulled and all of the ways we've fine-tuned the program with our staff in partnership with them, but how we've built all the efficiencies into our insurance plan. That's what that 0.41 represents as we look at it. It's a plan that we work on it every time we go into negotiations. Our staff understand that this is a significant budget driver, and they continue to partner with us to build a sustainable system for the town and for our budget. And that's at 0.41, that's remarkable. But so that, again, pulls COVID out, shows that trend over time. If I go to this third exhibit.
Before you go forward, and
Sure.
maybe you're going to do this, it looks like you may. I think
It sounds like I
it's
should.
important to, it would just be helpful to walk through, I know there's an asterisk under the COVID operating budget.
Sure.
What that is and what that isn't, relative to savings year to year due to COVID and expenses.
I believe we have an exhibit on that.
Okay.
That takes a deeper dive
Okay, we can wait.
into that. At a high level, I'll share that COVID operating expenses do include some of the things we talked about before, the additional staffing for custodians to do the disinfecting required, our building substitutes that we brought in order to cover our classes and keep them functioning and running, additional special education staff that we brought in order to have the PPTs and the meetings and to do the work that's required around that. It does include things like some capital costs. Again, when we look around, you see plexiglass everywhere. You see different furniture, different tables, things are spread out. The classroom furniture is different. You get a little deeper, masks we still supply masks as needed. We supply them to our teachers and to our students, as required. Hand sanitizer everywhere. So it goes from staffing to capital to operating needs. And all of it, again, it's always about doing things to scale. When you do something at the scale of over 4,000 students across 5 buildings. And certainly technology is a big piece of that too. The technology has been, it's a big part of the story in the budget. It has been something that, where we were really positioned us well to get to where we had to be to make this work. And that's really one of the reasons why we were able to flip in a day, 48 hours, to go from full closed to open back in March, and why the experience that everyone had even last week was so much improved over what had happened earlier. It's hardware and software. It's also cybersecurity, and some of the other things we've had to do. But yeah, all of that goes into, COVID expenses.
Brian,
Yes, Joy,
could I
please.
just add some clarification to what you're looking at right now?
Yeah,
So the amount of money that the town set aside, the 1.9 million, that is not included in these numbers here. So what this includes is the money we saved out of our budget in 2020 and what we project to save this year. So those are COVID-related reductions in our budget.
got it.
And then it
Yep.
includes expenditures that are not covered by that 1.9 million. So we're going to have this year, we're going to have heating, we're going to be replenishing the PPE and those types of things. For this year, last year we had about 199,000 in expenditures. This year it's more like 550 in operating in addition to the 1.9. And next year it's the 900,000+. So
Understood.
when we take a look at this, we want to be clear that it does not include the $1.9 million.
Dr. Keating? Sorry, I just had a question about what you just said. So in the FY20, the COVID operating of the 2.17 and we reduced our, for the, the calculation based on ISF costs, we reduced our budget to reflect the COVID costs by 2.1. Are you saying that we should add back money, the 1.9, or I'm a little confused what you're saying?
So what we're trying to do here is show our budget without the ISF and without COVID. And that's the operating budget.
Okay.
So, for example, in 2020, we gave back the town roughly $1 million. But in addition to that, we had actual expenditures recorded in our books.
Right.
So I added those two numbers together because those represent out of our appropriated budget COVID-related either savings or cost avoidance or expenditures, because we started spending money last year on disinfectant, some equipment and so forth that came out of operating. We didn't go for a special appropriation because we had the money in our budget. When you come to this year, we do project having a balance at the end of the year in excess of $1 million, and that's COVID related. But we've also spent, I also project that we're going to spend over 550,000 roughly, I don't have the exact number in front of me, of additional expenditures in the operating budget beyond the 1.9 million. When we went to the town for the 1.9 million back in September, that was for expenditures that we had either incurred or committed to. But we knew at that time, you probably recall the conversation, that while we know our heating expense is going to be higher because of the ventilation, we know we have to replenish PPE and those sort of things. So that's where the additional 550 or 60,000 comes from. Moving into next year, we're budgeting in the operating budget 909,000 for all of those things that that are like consumables and for the staffing. So we're looking at the first semester of being COVID prepared, just like we are this year. So that includes building substitutes for a half a year. It includes the custodians for more than a half a year because the first semester ends at the end of January, right? So we have to have them for close to 7 months and so on and so forth. So that's how we built this budget, anticipating a COVID preparedness or COVID ready environment for the first half of the school year. And that's where the numbers here come from. Because we're using the non-lapsing account, it did not impact our budget dollar for dollar. It's in a separate account. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure everybody was clear on that.
Oh, thank you, Joanne. Yep. Good?
Thank you.
Okay. Well, Dr. Keating, you're on a roll. Would you like to talk us through this one?
Sure, this is just another way of looking at similar information. I started out here with the budget appropriation, what we were appropriated for each of the years with the exception of 22, which 22 is what we're proposing tonight. The only year where we exceeded our budget was in 2019. Brian had mentioned that we did draw down $165,777 from the excess cost grant. So that was part of our operating budget. I took out of this number the contributions to the Internal Services Fund. If you take a look at our employee benefits line item, that line item is higher than this because it includes payroll taxes, workers' comp, retirement, and supplements, tuition reimbursement, and the like. So I felt that we feel like, you know, that is part of the operations of the school district, where the Internal Services Fund is really a separate fund and entity that we just fund every year at a certain amount of money. So I netted out the Internal Services Fund. Then I took a look at the COVID-related expenditures. And one thing I do want to mention, I do have to update the 2020 numbers. Tracy and I were working on them this afternoon in the prior exhibit. So those will be updated from the 2.1 million to the 2.2. I'm just having a little difficulty seeing it there, but so I wanted to take those expenditures and savings out of our equation so that we could get down to what we actually are spending on all non-COVID related and ISF related expenditures. And so if you take a look down at the numbers, I wanted to really compare on the base budget without those items in it for 2021, what's our budget compared to 2022, the proposed budget. And I did subtract out of that the start and end times, because that's about 0.4% of our budget. So that's what we're looking at for a mid-year implementation on that. And our base budget is going to go up a little bit over 2% for next year. And this puts into context the conversation. And you can see those large dips when you look at this chart here. You can see where those large dips going down. If you were to put a line over the bottom two points there, that represents the savings in that triangle of $3.3 million.
Okay.
Very helpful.
Sorry.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm raising my hand, but I don't know how.
Oh, sorry, I was looking down.
Oh, yeah, just got it.
Sorry. I don't know if there's a better way to do that. So in that, the 2022, the final percentage, the 215, that doesn't include the mid-year implementation of the start times?
No, it doesn't.
So if you said 410, so it'd be 2.55 with a mid-year and probably 2.85 if it was a full year implementation. Is that fair?
It would be probably close to a full percent for the full year.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, now I'm looking to see if any other hands are raised.
Yeah. I can't.
Good. Okay. Okay. Then, Dr. Keating, would you like to talk through why the budget changed?
Sure. Rather than read through 3 pages, I thought perhaps I'd give you some of the higher level changes that are in the budget so that you have a good sense of where the drivers are. Of course, our contractual increases represent a large chunk of our budget. I believe it's close to 1.3 million. One of the
This is
things
page,
that,
just
we
to
look
interrupt.
at every year
Oh, I'm sorry,
is,
Joanne, one sec, I'm sorry.
Page 26.
Page 26 begins the breakdown of why the budget changed at a glance, which
Yep.
we lovingly call crib notes for the budget. So, there you go.
Brian, would you mind expanding it for me?
Sure.
I didn't bring my budget book home and I'm visually
that?
challenged.
Is that better?
Okay. So just so that you know, so we're still in negotiations with our secretaries, our food service workers, and our teaching assistants. So you're not going to see any contractual increases in here for those groups. Well, food service is outside of this fund, but the secretaries and TAs. So that is their incremental changes would be noted in the salary adjustments. So that's just, I wanted to mention that from the onset. So if you were to take all the contractual increases,
Sorry.
maybe you can just stay at the beginning for
All
right now, Brian. You're going to look at close to $1.3 million in contractual increases. The interesting thing that happens, we look at our base salary year over year, what we projected when we go through negotiations. If you take a look at the teachers' projected salaries, they're down several $100,000, and the reason is the turnover. And this past year, we've had a good number of people who retired out of the system at the very top level. So they were making, you know, a 90, a BA 90, 19, let's say, or a BA 60, 19. And when they're replaced with somebody who is, you know, less experienced, those folks are placed on the grid. And so they're going to go from step to step, and their incremental increases are between 3%, possibly 4%, depending on where they are. Whereas if you were at the very top of the step, you'd get a 1.5 or 1.25. So it's hard because you're looking at the incremental increase here rather than what the contract settled out for 3 years ago, basically. So that's something to keep in mind when you look at incremental changes in the salary accounts. We are going to be going into negotiations with the teachers next summer, or this summer, for next year. So that would be, that's going to be a new set of challenges for us. We've been fortunate to keep our grid frozen for this entire contract. So when you see the GWI of the 206,000, that is for the people who are at the very top of the scale. The step is for everybody else. One of the big things that happened this year is we have a good number of people on leaves of absence. It's probably close to 10 times what we've had in the past. And those folks have been out, and then after a period of time, they're not collecting their salaries, and we're replacing them with substitutes and our building subs who have really been saving us, and they make less money. So next year, we have to assume that they're going to be coming back at the beginning of the school year. And the incremental change just to bring them back is $514,825. In a normal year, this would be anywhere between 60, 70, 80,000. But this is a big hit for our budget percentage wise going into the bottom line for the incremental change. We also had a number of people, and you're going to see this throughout the different accounts. We had a lot of turnover going on, and as quick as Darlene was replacing people, she was getting more people she had to replace. And that went on into the fall. So there's a timing issue in terms of the salaries when they started this year and the full year salaries for next year. Stipends, we have a number of activities, both athletic and non-athletic, that are not running at the budgeted capacity. So those have to be restored next year. And as we spoke about before, we are putting in a half a year of the building subs. So it's 12 FTEs for 5 months, $290,000. One of the things we've seen this year in our substitute accounts is the fact that we don't have a full complement of interns, but we do have interns, and the building subs and probably the availability of subs have reduced the overall cost of the combination of our substitute teacher account and the interns. And so as we move into next year, once we hit that mid-year, the second semester, we are assuming that that regular pace, once the building subs are gone, will pick up again. So we had to restore 33,252. And just oddly enough, this year, our PPT cost for our extra hours, or the after extra hours for all of those activities is higher this year. We expect it to somewhat normalize next year. And as you go down, you're going to see a number of things we're restoring after school programs. Again, we had a timing issue at central office in both the replacement of my admin and Brian's. The custodians, those are going up as well for the half a year, the 7 months of the year. You can go down. Yep, there we go. We've had a number of timing, a lot of custodian turnover and new hires that created savings. And so as you read through this, you'll see where those highlights are. When you get down to some of the global adjustments, if you move down a little bit, Brian. You're going to see the bus drivers, the equivalent of the one bus driver there for the start and end time. But if you see the other salary funding needs, this salary adjustment is close to double because of the fact that we have these outstanding contracts. So that's something that you might pick up on. The grid progression, those are pretty solid numbers. The contract requires our staff to get back to us by December, a date in December certain. And so we calculate out what people are going to move from one column to the next. So let's say from a BA 30 to a BA 60 or a BA 60 to a 90. So we know the cost of that. The FTE, this is the FTE for the specials due to certain in time. No enrollment variability this year. We really felt that we looked at all of our class sizes and everybody is built out to guidelines with the exception of the high school. The middle school. We have some teams that are slightly below, but we are very hesitant to do a variability reduction because of what happened this year. We had to restore a team at the 7th grade, and we also had to do some 5th grade staffing as well. And it just really concerned us that those kind of in migration of staffing would require additional staffing for us that we wouldn't have in the budget. I did put in an allowance of $90,000 for leave of absence for the first half of next year, and we'll see what happens with that. And we went higher on our turnover savings this year by $150,000. We're usually, last year I think we were at 125. Most years we're at 100, but we did go at 150, thinking that maybe a few more people might decide to retire based on what's going on with COVID. Is there any questions on the salaries?
Joanne?
Mm-hmm.
So I just had a question on the turnover because I feel like I listened to these budget conversations so many times, and could you just talk about, I feel like we've thrown around a turnover number of 250 to 300 every year, and so I just want to understand what that is, because I feel like that's the number we always get to in the budget cycle. And so why we're at 150, I mean, I know we've had a lot of turnover already last year. So, but if we could kind of have a little conversation about that, because I know it'll come up anyway.
Yeah, it does every year at the Board of Finance. The bottom line is you really don't know. This is a highly variable projection, and it could really throw the budget off by quite a bit. And at this time of year, we generally don't know of anybody who is going to be retiring unless we were fortunate for somebody to come forward and tell us, so it's like a wild card. And given the amount of people that did retire this year, we're concerned that we're not going to even hit this number. We're always concerned that we're going to, not hit the number that we put in, and it's a credit to the budget. But generally speaking, we have hit our 250 to 300 number because of a variety of reasons, not just retirees, but people, moving in and out, attrition, just general attrition. And as we get closer and closer to the adoption of the budget, we generally have a better handle on it. So we're more comfortable pushing the number up or saying, we really don't think we can push it up. So that's the thinking on that. We monitor it just like with the Internal Services Fund. We'll be monitoring claims right up to the day the town council approves the budget. And if we can make an adjustment downward, hopefully, we've done it.
Yep.
So it's a similar type of variable account.
And I think
Thank
I would add that I believe last year we had a large number of retirees as well. Did we?
We did, yeah.
Larger than usual?
And it does tend to, if we look back over 5 or 7 years, we, pretty consistent, it goes up a little, and then we have a year with 4, where, it sort of, it strands you. So we need, given, again, variability, many who are thinking about retiring have retired. And Darlene has worked very, very hard with them individually, and and Vivian has helped actually too. So they understand how the retirement works and all of those pieces. So you just have to be careful.
So moving into employee benefits, we are going up $1.7 million in the Internal Services Fund. Last year, we took a reduction of $2.6 million. 500 of that was a change in the funding policy from 60/40 to 40/60 as to who owned the reserves. So it was like $2.1 million reduction for claims and related costs. Now, going into the projection this year, we have been typically for the last several years anywhere between 2.6 and 13.1 in actual claims. And a few years we dipped below the 2.6. So we felt comfortable going in that we wouldn't have a large spike this year. But because of the concern that people have not avoided but deferred services, and that we are still in the midst of a pandemic where people are not, going to have these services done. Joe has projected that our claims for next year are going to go from 13.1 to 14.2. So we are going to be staying with this, and if at the workshop we can get into a deep dive, I can go through the P&L and the balance sheet with the board for last year, and then again for this year going into next year. But at this point right now, based on his analysis, I think, this is where we are. In terms of FICA, Medicare, and workers' comp, these are all unemployment we've been hit pretty hard with this year, and we will into next year, but we're looking at a mid-year relief on that as well. So we should realize a $30,000 reduction there.
Just
Contracted services. You'll see when you read.
One sec, Joanne. Go ahead, Rick.
just one question on that. So just so I understand, of the 1.7 million in employee benefit increase, Joe's expecting about 1.1 or 1.2 of that is an increase just based on expected increased claims due to essentially COVID kind of piling things up. Is that the expectation?
And what may happen is we may underspend our claims this year, which would give us fund balance, of course, and balance it out down the road. And that's a possibility. But in the meantime, we're sticking with our projections. He actually is told me that, and he's been tracking out our claims over the last 18 months, that we are tracking to the 13.1 right now. But we did have an upswing during the summer when people got, started to incur some more expenses above budget. So my thinking is, just looking at it, is we could have some fund balance based on, where we are right now with COVID.
Which we could use in
Right.
23.
Yeah, it's just too early to, we go through this every year. It's a little too early to say, oh, great, we're in a great spot. And particularly in the middle of a pandemic, we have to assume that we're going to be where we said we'd be.
Yeah. The other thing is that we have one very, very large claimant in our system right now. And so we're not seeing, you don't get reimbursed from stop loss for close to 60 days. So all those high claimant dollars are in there right now, at least a 60-day lag. So it's, we'll see where we are at the end of the year, but hopefully by the end of March, we'll have some better news for the town.
Thank you.
As you go through here, you're going to see where we're restoring many things that we've deferred or only partially implemented this year. So for example, like restore funds for implementing revised scheduling. Last year we had, or this current year, we have 40,000 in the budget. We're planning on spending 20, so we're asking for 20 for next year. And you'll see that throughout. In prior years, the intern account, we've always budgeted it up to the maximum number that we would like. This year, I just balanced it out to what we actually have in-house right now, and I put the remainder in the sub-account. So there's not two accounts that are variable. There's a DEI initiative in this budget of $25,000. We're going to host the Turkey Bowl hopefully next year, which is a big deal. That would be great.
It'd be a big deal.
And legal matters are going up slightly, and that has to do with the fact that we are going to be in negotiations with our teachers. 15,000. So forth. Is there any questions on contracted services?
Joanne, this is Carl. I'm just trying to understand the internal services fund. So, last year at this time, we were talking about, around that 10 million, and that was what we were expecting. And so that's what we were budgeting for the current fiscal year based on the experience last year. And that was all before COVID impact started. So that was in the same January timeframe. And then COVID started, and I know usage went down. So I would have expected the numbers to be going down, and now I know they've rebounded. So, but I'm still struggling to then understand the large jump from what's budgeted from this current year to next.
Sure. So what happened last year was we have had several years, and we always balance up in our budget process, but of very flat claims. So where trend and usage generally goes up, 5, 6, 7%. We go on those actuarial factors for budgeting purposes, and we've always, prior to this current fiscal year, we had always used a conservative model. But as a result of that, we had $2.1 million in our reserve account, or projected to be in the reserve account, moving into this current fiscal year because of a reduction in claims. And the claims were going from 13.6 was the forecast for last year, down to 12.6. It was like $1 million decrease in the projections once we got into the year. So that picked up some fund balance, and we ended the prior year, 19, with another 1.2 million that was not projected because claims really leveled out and went down. So we were looking at a situation where all of our claims for a good period of time have been, like I said, within a $500,000 swing, which on $12 to $13 million is not significant. And when you get that kind of a swing, you can carry it forward. So as a result, we were able to reduce our budget request out of the operating budget to that 10 million, 9 million, $7,000 or $8,000. We didn't think it was a 1-year savings and then would rebound and come back, because we were steady at that 12.6, 12.7. However, with COVID, those projections have gone from that stabilized numbers to 14.2. And so that swing of, right there is $1.5 million, is creating this situation that we have right now. So again, I think we have to really take a look at that. And when we get into the workshop, and Carl, by all means, give me a call if you'd like, we have financial statements just for the internal services fund. And I'm happy to walk you through that, and we could do it at the workshop next week as well. But that could be like an hour conversation just to get through it and understand it, because it is a big piece of our budget, and it's a variable, it's a volatile number in our budget, and it has been over the last few years, because it goes up and it goes down, and it goes up and it goes down. And so that is why we have that difference.
Joanna, I think it's important for Carl to understand that number can change as we get to the end of the budget cycle, the request. So if we are seeing better, better experiences, that gets adjusted as we get closer to the end of the year, and our request would change. But it's hard to do that now because it's so early.
Yeah. My thinking is it's probably, given the fact that the hospitals are being, utilized for COVID right now, and people don't want to have procedures done when people are sick in the hospital with COVID, that it will be coming down.
The only thing I would say is that last year when we talked about this, we actually did think that the healthcare was going to be a permanent reset lower, and some other folks argued, well, you should ignore that. It's not really a savings. And it seems like probably that argument is true, that we should just ignore it from year to year. But we tried to not do that next year. So it's just, I think we need to be more consistent.
Yeah. I mean, I really think I was on the phone with Joe for quite a long time, the week between Christmas and New Year's, just trying to wrap my head around this, because I said to him, like, $1.7 million is a lot for our budget incrementally. And he just didn't want to go much lower than that right now. So we have to, he's the expert, and his advice is what really is most important here. But so it's from on pages 99 through 102. There's a write-up on it, so you can see it. Now, one of the things he was saying to me is, you could very well exceed your claims projections of 13.1 for this current year. And if that happens, we have a policy in place with the town for our reserve replenishing. It's a mechanism to get the funding back in place without going through this process. And so I said I didn't want to put in an extra $400,000 this year just in case,
Right.
because we do have that replenishment policy in place with the town.
Okay. We will definitely take a deeper dive with the Resources Committee, and we could even, when we get that scheduled, if you're interested, we could even see if Joe's available, be on the phone for a call to get into the rationale, the numbers and everything that's there. Okay, can we?
I think
move
Sherry wanted to say
Yeah,
something.
can we move to Sherry?
Yeah, hi, Joanne. First of all, I am compelled to say thank you to you and your team. Amid the pandemic, just putting together this rigorous budget is incredible work. It has to be acknowledged because it's just incredible. Can you just talk about the diversity, equity, and inclusion line item, what that $25,000 would cover, and just given the importance of this initiative, it's now written into our district goals. I just want to make sure that that is an appropriate amount.
Sure. Brian, would you like to take that?
Yeah, sure. It's hard to make sure, Sherry. We wanted to make sure we had resources in there to take next steps as they come through the work that we're planning to do this spring, in creating a statement and working with the Board of Ed to set some long and short-term goals. We wanted to be sure that, if we're going to continue that work, whether it's with an external consultant or do some other things in the district, we had resources, seed money to do that. But since we're not at that place where we know what those plans will be, we felt like $25,000 gives us money to get started. And if there's winds up being more than that, we would, look to see where we can pull, whether it's from maybe Title II and a grant money or something like that, to make it whole for whatever those plans may be. So I can't say if it's enough or not. It's not targeted to a specific goal, program or anything at this point. It's really just to have the resources for the board after developing the statement, the vision, and the short-term goals.
Okay, thank you.
All right. We'll move down to property services next.
All right. How's my drive?
Okay. So we've added $20,000 in for repairs to Dunning Stadium. We do believe, and Jay does believe, that fees for use of the facility will offset some of this, if not all of it. It's our first time out on this responsibility based on the new agreement. So we didn't want to estimate a revenue at this time, but that's where the $20,000 comes in. Again, you're going to go through, you're going to see some things restored because of because of COVID, we are taking a credit of 50,000 to the budget, and we do believe it's a realistic savings for continuing to insource on facilities. So we do have a great capacity internally with all of our tradesmen and the quality of the people we have and their ability to get work done. So we feel like we're safe there. You're going to see software support and software licensing. I'm not going to go down the list in detail, and you can certainly ask a lot of questions on that. Jill knows quite a bit about all of these applications. But so through COVID and through the remote learning last year and into this current year, our teaching staff has immersed themselves in new tools and just really selected some highly productive, well-leveraged resources. And these are those resources that were paid for currently out of the 1.9 million that we received from the town that we now want to bring into our operating budget as annual tools or tools to be used annually to deliver instruction and for kids to help them with their work. So it's just shy of 100,000 if you were to add up all of these various numbers here. So we can move down. And maybe at the workshop or the next board meeting, if you have questions, certainly we can answer those. Rental space, we've put in some funding here to rent additional space for the downtown campus. So there is a space on the second floor that's going to be available, and we're really hoping to be able to capitalize on that piece of real estate there. We're going to need to rent some stuff for the Turkey Bowl, as we do every time we host it. So that's that. And then as you get down to the final category here under technical support, we talked about this at Ed Resources last week. When we went to remote learning last year, we really focused on cybersecurity. It was kind of a laser focus. We had received correspondence from the federal government and the state government with regards to the threats that were out there for cybersecurity. So we really took a very close look at our firewall, our backup systems, and our antivirus. So those are like the three points of concern that you have when you're really looking at cybersecurity. And we first went after our firewall. As you may recall, we had a little bit of a scare last year thinking that we were hacked, and we didn't end up being hacked, but it really prompted us to do a lot of investigation. We did a lot of research into best practices and best products. And what happened was when we went through the process, we did decide to change from Cisco to Palo Alto with a 24/7 coverage on our firewall through Advanced Networks out of Milford. And they gave us a pretty deep discount if we were to purchase the firewall plus a 3-year subscription. So we did pay for it in this current year. So that's where our current year budget absorbed that. And then next year, we're avoiding the cost. And the same thing took place for our backup system. We came across a really useful tool that basically, once it's written to file, it cannot be overwritten as a proprietary system. So we really felt good about it, and we did the same thing. They gave us like it was 50% off, basically, to go the 3 years. Going into next year, we are looking next year to change our antivirus. We're investigating that right now. So there's funds in the budget. We have the funds from the normal, the antivirus we currently have. So it's a small increase to go to the new product. And that's that for property services. Is there any questions there?
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to purchase services. So our transportation contract this year was frozen at 1920 rates. We did not incur a rate increase in the current year, so we've saved money this year, which was great. It's about $100,000 or so. Moving into next year, however, we have to catch up. We're not paying for this year again, but the rate structure is going to the 21-22 structure that we have in the contract. So that's why the contractual rate is going up significantly. We do have the 7 buses that we had in the plan for last year for the start and end times rolling forward. And then we need to restore our transportation for special education field trips. And a big one is our athletic. We have a budget of about $250 a year. And this year we're not incurring, at least 2/3 of it. And then there's some other minor different things going down until you get to outplacements. And that has to do with special education, as you know. And that budget is about $4.5 million. So this year, we're going into the year with a modest type of increase considering the size of that budget. And then finally, we're restoring our conference and travel, which has basically just been unspent, with the exception of a few very minor things. Any questions there? Deanna?
Thank you, Joanne. Could you remind me, when does our DATCO contract go through 2022? When do we renegotiate our DATCO contract?
Next year.
So,
We're doing it for the following 2022-23.
okay, so it'll be sometime during this school year that you'll be entering those negotiations for the final next year. And have you gotten any indication? I mean, I kind of remember during the last negotiations, there were, surrounding districts paid a significantly higher rate increase than we did because we stayed with the same company when districts left. And then, if you pair that with what we've been talking about with a driver shortage and a bus shortage, how confident are we in these numbers for additional buses and drivers and things like that going forward?
Well, fortunately, we have not had a driver issue like most districts in the state, probably across the country. And I think it has a lot to do with how we treated them last year during COVID. I mean, we honored our contract and they came through for us. So we don't have a problem with our current configuration. And we believe that we can attract drivers from other districts too, because of our contract, the contract, their salary and benefits and vacation and other benefits that they get that other districts don't provide. So I'm not so concerned about that. I'm more concerned about getting the equipment. I mean, everything is backlogged right now. You can't buy a piece of furniture without waiting 3 months now. Never mind, manufacturing and putting together a bus. And also where we're going to park buses. I mean, those are challenges that we're going to have to work through with DATCO when the time comes.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving down to supplies, we are going to individualize supplies for art and a little bit for music. There's not many there, but mainly for art for K-8 for next year. We did that this year. We're going to continue to do that next year. Hopefully the year after we'll get back to sharing. That would be a nice thing. It's a lot of work to put these packets together from what I understand. Then we have just some other minor changes in terms of supplies. And the textbook account is really based on the program need, when books are coming due to be turned over or changed, or a new edition is coming up, and enrollment. So we're actually going down 101,000. And next year that could go up 101,000. It just depends on the cycle. And I thought when we met with the finance board, back in December, a few members of the finance board, Jill explained the entire process, and it was very well done. So I'm sure at our workshop, if you want more information on that, she'd be happy to provide it. The equipment budget is actually, this is what we're spending the money on, but if you look over to the right, you'll see of this worksheet, you'll see that there is a reduction of 17,000 year over year with the budget. But it's, we could use a lot more money in this account, especially for classroom furniture, specifically at Saks. But at some point, we'll work on a 5-year plan to replace the furniture in that building. Just moving down, we hope to have our fees restored. Oh, we are planning for next year traditional graduation. So there's no money in this budget this current year for the type of graduation we had last year. We are expecting that for this year. That's what the reforecast reflects, a similar type of graduation for next year. But going into the traditional graduation ceremony, it's less expensive. And then, of course, we hope to have all of these revenues restored pretty much for athletics and other related type of revenue generators. And the bottom line at the end of the day is it looks, based on everything that we know today, and things can change, but it looks like we're going to be returning about $1 million to the town at the end of the year. So
Okay.
the budget was designed so that you can actually pull the executive summary out and get a good understanding of what's in the budget. The last exhibit in the executive summary is just the recap for each of the schools and cost centers. But after that, it gets into more detail. So if you were to look at each school, you'd see that there's a narrative and it explains about the elementary program and the budget drivers and so on and so forth. Then it's followed by a staffing plan for each of the schools and the class sizes. You can see the class sizes in there. And then it goes over to the actual financials in the very same format that you looked at, the district as a whole. It's broken out for each of the schools and cost centers. If you were to take each of the cost centers and the schools and add them together, it comes to what's in the executive summary. So everything ties right out. And one thing else I wanted to mention to you is under district-wide, we've aggregated the costs for COVID and for the start and end time change, or the alignment of the start times and end times, so that you can see it all in one area. Last year, I had it broken out by, who was responsible for managing those functions. And it was difficult for people to say, to really put their arms around or wrap their arms around, well, what are we spending the money on for start and end times? So we decided to just put everything for those two areas into the district-wide. I think it's on the last page. There should be one down here. Yeah. Keep going. Yeah.
There it is. Yep.
Yeah, so there's COVID, and just got all of the expenses outlined for you.
Yep. School start times.
Start and end times.
Good. And then the pages on the ISF. Yep.
And we can take a deep dive into that internal services fund, as I said. The other section in the document that you'll want to take a look at is the capital projects, and they are broken out by school in here. You can, and they align with the 5-year plan. If it's something new, it's labeled as new in the recap, so you'll be able to see anything that has come up. We try not to put anything new that's not absolutely pressing into the very next budget request, because people need time to think it through. Our biggest item is the roof at the high school. That's going to be close to a $7 million project. However, it depends upon, how we actually schedule that out. If we do one staging and just do the roof and through the school year and whatever, it's going to be significantly less than if we break it into 2 or 3 summers. Because the staging and the rigging and everything and the dunnage, everything that goes into getting all the materials up on the roof is very expensive. And if you have to do it 2 or 3 times, it just really increases the cost. So we're trying to figure out a way that we can do it all at once. So we're working on a schedule to do that. We hope to make it, we plan to make it solar ready. You got a lot of real estate up there, so we're hoping to have a fair amount of solar up on top of that roof. You're going to see in here money for boiler replacements, phase 2 at Saks. We have 3 boilers there. We're doing 1 this year, condensing boiler. Next year we'll do 2. You're going to see some CHP here for both Saks and the high school. And that's all going to save us money down the road in our operating budget. And then paving and some other things you'll see in here as well. Again, when we sit down with Ed Resources, we can take a deeper dive into this.
So,
And then
Joanne, when would you anticipate starting the work at the high school? What month? for the roof?
I'm sorry, Penny?
If this budget goes through and we're doing the roof at the high school, when would you anticipate going out to bid and then actually
Okay.
starting the work?
We're going to be out on the street either this week or very early next week with the spec. We hired the Kim Winchell, who we've worked with on the other roofs in the district recently, south and east. And he's been working with Tom Balazzi, who's our structural engineer, to put together, between the two of them, the spec that's going to go out. And we're going to bid it out with a few different scenarios. One would be going, one setup, one install, and then the other would be with 2 summers and possibly 3. But that will get out on the street soon, short term. And we'll open up the bids in another 3 to 4 weeks. And then from there, we'll evaluate. And prior to the final vote on the budget, we'll have a solid number. And this is a similar process that we followed for South and East, and it's really worked well.
So we would be starting the work then this coming summer?
Yes, yep, that's the plan. We really need to. I mean, we have a lot of, the building takes in water in a lot of different spots, and, you have to protect it. You have to protect what's below it. And we just really need to do it. Dan is working with Tiger on the paving.
Yep.
So we should have those numbers shored up too as well. Then we also have for 3 vans coming in, we have one more wheelchair van that we have to replace. It's very old. And then we have our 600,000 in for the technology lease. And we have the technology plan in one of the appendix. You could take a look there to see what we're going to procure with that, at least what the plan is right now. After this, you're going to see the food services, the grants, and the other funds, where we stand with that. This is the grants that come up first. And this is additional funding to what we currently, what we have in the operating, their grant funding. However, when you look at the staffing on each of the cost centers, the staffing that's paid for grants is included in the, and footnoted in the cost centers. This is food services right here. We took a $400,000+ hit last year, loss. We expect to have a similar loss this year. We're going to watch it closely and do everything we can to turn it around. But with the high school being on hybrid, it's really been tough on the financials. The high school program, SACS to some extent as well, but the high school program really has been the main carrier for the program district-wide. And the kids go and they leave when they're not in class, and we're at 50%, or we have been for most of the time. So if we have more hybrid plus and more eating in school, it'll help us out quite a bit here, but we do expect another loss.
Yep.
I think that's it.
Yep.
Oh, here's the extra, yeah, the rentals. And of course, this year we're not renting anything.
Right.
These are the financials from last year.
Right.
These schools are dead after school's out. We still have a very generous community with close to $500,000 every year.
Yeah.
The summer program's been good too.
Yeah. But the balance sheet on all of those is strong, so, but, right.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about any of those. The food service is the biggest concern because it is a, it's an enterprise fund, so to speak, and it's self-sufficient.
So in this budget, we had built in some money moving out of the food services into the internal services account to pay for some of the insurance. I believe, Joanne, if we reverse that?
Yeah. Yeah, we're not going to put it in this current year, which is another chunk of the difference. The 200,000 that we had planned on a revenue to ISF is not going to take place from food services. And I didn't repeat it for next year either.
Right.
I mean, if it turns around again down the road and there's sufficient funding, we'll have to reconsider it, but not now.
Okay. And then
Joanne?
more details.
Yes.
Sorry, it's Deanna. I think would be important for us to maybe note, because we didn't get any money from the town to sort of offset our costs running our food service when we were doing a lot of the delivery for, I don't even know who we were packing meals for and delivering meals and things like that. But did we get any reimbursement from outside entities that we were doing this work for, or how did that work?
So we did receive funding for the program that was at Waveney.
Okay.
They did pay us in full.
The
And
Meals on
Tracy, if you're
Wheels.
still on, the last I had checked, we did not receive the reimbursement for the food that was going to the elderly in town.
Okay.
But I don't know, Tracy, are you on?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I'm sorry. It's not, I'd have to look it up and see. I know we got one of them and the other one was late coming in.
Yeah. Well, in the Nancy Harris analogy of, same pair of pants, different pockets, I don't really care so much. But I just think it would be important to be able to highlight that. And, as we're talking about the loss, because I can envision some conversations about staffing and in that area if, and so I want to make sure that we're prepared for those kind of conversations.
Sure, and just to be clear, so we're speaking the same language, one of the things we did was take Meals on Wheels into the cafeteria in order to help out at Waveney, and we did that for a couple of months, and Meals on Wheels paid for every meal that came through, so we worked with them directly, they knew what the cost was, and they paid us. Another is a program that we stepped forward with, along with the health department, which was to provide fresh perishable food for seniors in town. So instead of the shelf-stable food, it was bread and meat and milk and eggs and cheese and those things. So, and we were doing that once every 2 weeks using our supply chains, especially when food scarcity was a significant concern and the supply chains were breaking down all around the country. So we stepped forward and did that a couple of times. It was once every 2 weeks, I think, and maybe we did it 4 times or so throughout. And that's the money that we have not been reimbursed for, but that it was really a community effort. We used our supply chain, brought it in, did the inventory, and then Stuart and the CERT team came in, helped to pack things up, get them into the bags, and then the town, I think it was DPW, if not, it was the parking attendants perhaps, drove over to the where they are and did the deliveries and did whatever. So it really was a whole town-wide effort with volunteers throughout, and we were proud to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's a great example of the partnership and how we work really well with the various organizations and with the various departments in town. So I think we need to highlight that.
Yeah, definitely.
Great.
And we'll check on the payment.
Yeah. So, we could spend another 4 hours sort of going in and out, but if the board feels comfortable with enough information to sort of take a little bit a deeper dive into it between now and next week, we invite questions. Certainly send them along, and it'll help us to frame out or to sort of structure the conversation a bit for the resources meeting next week. I'll ask Jacqueline to contact everybody and try to find a time that works for everyone so that everyone can be available. As we did, you'll recall last year, I think we were even in the auxiliary gym at one point, having different meetings. We were talking about the school start times and the budget and all of that. And it was, it'll be virtual, but I expect no less lively, and we could answer some questions and get into those discussions there as well.
I just want to say thank you. In a typical year, it's difficult to explain in detail how this budget changes, and in this year, to do it in a cohesive, detailed, and I think easy to understand way, it's just it's a testament to all the hard work and professionalism. So thank you, Dr. Keating, Tracy, and the administration.
Thank you.
This is great.
Thank you.
It's Tracy. I just jumped in really quick and checked, and we have not yet received reimbursement for the senior grocery delivery. It's just short of 20,000.
All right, so we'll check in with them. And, turn on our collections mode.
All right, yep, thank you. Thank you, Joanne, Dr. Keating, Tracy, Aaron, and the team, and all of the administrators as well. I really appreciate it. I think this is an excellent start, and I look forward to more conversations about it. So any comments from the public? Again, anyone who's watching who would like to speak up may do so by, is there anybody there?
Nope, we're
No?
good.
Okay, we'll move
All
right along.
staff members.
All right.
And Tom,
Yes.
Tom
okay.
Butterworth.
Oh.
Hi, Tom.
Announcements and future business.
Sure, briefly, we have a meeting next week. We've got some other meetings, in between. We'll meet on the 25th. We've invited Principal Gusich to join us, just to give us a quick snapshot on a little bit of what's happening as far as COVID update over at Saks. And we'll see, we'll get Alan in, I promise. We'll make that happen too. But Dave's invited, and we'll continue our conversation.
Great. All right, with that.
I want to hear about sound attenuation in the media center.
And you will.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn? Bob, second. Sherry, all in favor? All right, good night, everyone. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.